Assalamualaikum. Hello, my name is SYAFIQAH binti Hashim, and I will be the person in charge for my team project presentation. Task was given from our beloved lecturer of Railway Policy and Legislation, Dr. Zuraida binti Ngadirun. The project is about the railway restructuring and privatisation in New Zealand. So without further ado, let's start our presentation.
First of all, here is our summary of our project. In the summary, we will talk roughly about the focus, objective, problem statement, result and conclusion. And the methodology that can be applied in this restructuring and privatization is starting the restructuring phase, restructuring the organization, financial restructuring, and the privatization process.
Now, the introduction. A brief history about the New Zealand Railway Restructuring and Privatisation. In July 1993, New Zealand Rail Limited was sold to a New Zealand consortium and international investor as a single unit. Its aim at reforming the national rail system. Until 1982, the railway network was run as a department of government and the government had a direct control about it. By the late of 1970s, the Department of Railway had shown the usual features of monopoly government-founded enterprise, without intensive of economic performance. The government agreed to refocus the operation of rail transport on commercial criteria, and in 1982, the government established the railway system as a state-owned corporation. The importance of railway restructuring. The entire economy will improve to the extent that capital is used productively. Railway transcend their role as a large-scale enterprise. That railway price provide the fundamental parameters in most common economies from which commodity market takes shapes. And last, railway price describe the parameters for commercial relations between producers and consumers and the scope of feasible buy or sell transaction. The economic reform of the railway and its rationale. The reason behind these needs of railway restructurings are: first, government find railway costly to operate. Second, government find it expensive to operate railway. Third, the relationship between the owners, government, and their rail organization prevents the emergence of business creation among railway managers and consequently boosts financial performance. Fourth, railway have lost market share to their competitors. And lastly, they are gradually realizing that railway should be retained and developed as an essential component of the transportation system. Thus, a well-planned restructuring process involves the formation of railway organization into corporation with the characteristic. The base of the New Zealand Reformation. The sector committees on transport of the Conference of 1969 made the following proposal for restructuring of transport policy. First, economic efficiency and the minimization of economic costs. Second, each transport agency should bear its fair share of the actual cost of the services provided at the expenses of the public. Third, each transport agency should gain credit for the purpose of national, social or development itself. Thus, in 1974, Parliament was presented with the resulting government discussion paper. The name of the discussion paper was A New Direction of New Zealand Transport. It expressed about the discomfort with government controls on transportation. The paper identified in two sectors of transport, which is the private sector and the public sector. It recommended creating a railway corporation. Thus, since 1980s, the ideas found in the Green Paper have been implemented in transport policy. Economic characteristics and the implication for restructuring. There are four characteristics that we will discuss here. The first one is the multiple products. Railway service suppliers are multi-product. Most businesses provide both freight and passenger service. First, the passenger service. It is not homogeneous as they may include intermodal transportation services. The second one, passenger transport, coexists with a local line, regional services, and high-speed train on some corridors or routes. Now, the second one characteristic is cost structure. The railway costs are often split into four broad categories of costs. The first one, which is train operating costs. It is typically vary with train mileage and include the cost of delivering transport services such as fuel, crew, maintenance, or rolling stock. Second one, which is track and signaling costs, which is include infrastructure operation and maintenance. It is typically differ based on the length of the road and the number of trains needed by the railway. The third one, terminal and station costs. It is depending on the level of traffic but significantly vary with the amount of traffic. And lastly, cost of administration. It is tend to vary with the size of the company.
Okay, so now we go at the first method, is the starting the restructuring. The privatization process for New Zealand is begin in 1982, and the second point is the response to growing concern about the transport industry. So it can minimize the economic cost by each mode carrying traffic, and each transport agency should be fair and fair share to the real cost for resource provided at the public. Okay, we go to the next slide, which is the restructuring phase. As we know at the slide, we have a 3 control structure, 3 restructuring phase. First, control structure, competitive environment and industry position. And the last one is the organization structure. So the control structure, New Zealand have a strong political issue. So for the competitive environment, they have the protection from competition transport deregulation. For the rule is the 3-year phase out and 150 kilometer limit. And the last one is the organization structure. So the organization structure is functionally organized and organized by business group such as freight and other. Okay, we go to the final method, which is the final restructuring. And the first point is New Zealand Rail Limited Vesting Order 1990 established the rail business as a company. The rail business could be private without the need for future legislation. Proceed to the next topic, 5.0 is new technologies and work restructuring. At this subtopic, we have 2 main points. The first main point is the track maintenance and size equipment, and the second one is the personnel multiple task. Next is the personnel multiple task. At the personnel multiple task, we have 3 main points, which is the first point is the only limited move has been made toward multi-skilling of staff, and the possible multi-skilling opportunities also exist in combining the function of track and structure. And the last one is the train crew has been reduced from 3 to 1. We go at the first subtopic, which is the track maintenance and size equipment. So the number of workshop has been reduced gradually from 10 to 2. The 2 number of workshop is the one of the concentration on locomotive rebuild and one workshop for wagon construction. The second point is the eliminate the duplication of facilities, reducing both capital and maintenance costs for workshop activity. The optimal number could be found only to the experience of operating with fewer workshops.
Hello, hi again. So now I am going to do a presentation regarding the basis privatization. So New Zealand state-owned limited liability companies are generally identified with state-owned enterprises (SOEs), which are created under the SOE Act in 1986 during the reform period of the mid-late 1980s. The trade operating principles are encapsulated in 1986 Act. So SOE shall act as a limited liability firms. So about the rail ownership. For the railway ownership in 1983, New Zealand Railways Corporation became a limited liability company. Despite the arrival of SOE Act in 1987, railways are used for all sorts of education and social programs. In short, we would expect a railway efficiency level to improve from privatization at least as much as would standard SOEs under the Act of 1986 Act. For the privatization process, the first process begins with the starting. So the privatization was the real reason behind the creation of New Zealand Rail Ltd, which was planned in 1989 and implemented in 1990. Next is the strategy, where the new structure had included a minimum of both capital and labor resources. So the costs were low and operation had the mandate to lower them. The marketing units, meanwhile, had a strategy to secure the volume growth in all markets. Lastly, the process. New Zealand Rail was considered for a privatization where the government itself had a well-established process in place to assess the appropriateness of privatization of each undertakings and had a preferred selling methods.
New Zealand Railway Corporation, or more popular with NZRC, is the state-owned company that owns on the behalf of the Crown below land of the Kiwi Rails rail network. However, it was called the New Zealand Railway Corporation Act 1981 before it converted to the Department of Railways into a statutory corporation. This corporation has been succeeded by Transrail, Kiwi Rail, while the predecessor was New Zealand Railway Department. The headquarters of the corporation is Wellington. Number 2 is Crown of Status. By this status, we can reduce and monitoring and control the corporation by minister involvement in managing the business by largely transfer into the board of directors and chief executive officer. Even though railway reform began in 1982 with the New Zealand Railway Corporation Act 1981, the subsequent restructuring of the rail system was greatly influenced by changes in the general industry policy of the government. This modification has been applied to all government departments, which has started in the mid of 1980s. In general, both changes were intended to increase the quality of departmental funding in terms of needs, productivity, and accountability. Those supplying commercial service were continuously challenging private competitors. Amazingly, political intervention was seen as a contributing factor in taking bad decisions. And lastly is state-owned company. The new trading undertaking were established under the State-Owned Enterprise Act 1986. This legislation required the creation of new state-owned companies (SOEs) in the same way as any other company under the Act of Company. They were also expected to work as profitable enterprise. With this company, it can purchase their properties from the Crown at a fixed price and were forced to generate rates of return on profits. It was consistent with the fact that SOEs will not have a competitive edge over other same-operated corporations. Even though SOEs were accountable to their owners, They were essentially accountable to the public, to the Minister of State-owned Enterprise and the Minister of Finance, Ministers and Parliament.
New performance is the restructuring and privatisation. There are many achievements that New Zealand Rail has achieved since their restructuring and privatisation, but in this context, we will only discuss about three achievements. The first one is employment level. The substantial decrease in employment achieved while overall level of service have fallen to a far lesser degree. In 1983, the railway often absorbed excess labour for political or macroeconomy, and the organisation would be restructured and streamlined could not have been foreseen until the 1991 Employment Contract Act was passed. The workforce were unionised at a point of about 95%, when membership had been mandatory for most groups of workers. In the early stage, the railway union have played a fairly positive role in achieving productivity gains demanded by the government or stakeholder, but at the expenses of the scale of the union. The second one, which is the traffic level. Before the removal of top operators distance limitation of 1983, the railway held over 3.2 billion NTK and about 11 million tons. The emergence of deregulation had led to gradual erosion of the base of traffic on railways, particularly when expanding truck fleet. By 1993, the rail traffic was reduced to 2.5 billion NTK and 8.5 million tons. Thus, rail unprecedented level of competition was a key factor in the commercialization process. The continued existence of railway as a regional transport company now rely on a service that was both market and non-price term. And the last one, which is the service quality. Before the restructuring and privatisation, the railway regarded at the type of corporation, which is the low-performing operator having high rates of damage and loss and poor reliability in terms of timekeeping. But through the regulation, rail reacted even more to customer requirement. Total management of quality has been implemented through organisation. The two workshops at the company were certified with ISO 9002 certification, and the belt gauge method of evaluating company performance was used. Thus, the finding of this change was promising. With a wide range turnout in customer perception, about 80% of customers believe that service efficiency had increased in an independent survey.
And lastly, for the conclusion, we can conclude that management, conflict and financial need to manage very well to have a successful company. By doing this project, we know that development in railway transportation in New Zealand was challenging and not easy to move to the success stage. There are a lot of benefits that we can get by doing this research about the railway restructuring and privatisation in New Zealand. We can learn and apply the benefit to our future development in railway sector in Malaysia, with many ways improvement such as the strategy and process that have been done by New Zealand Railway Management.